Hello guys, it's me Ambrose, back in with another video. Today we're gonna be reacting to a video from Mental Wave that was uploaded 4 months ago called Solipsism. Can lead to bad takes. Now I disagree with Solipsism. It basically teaches that reality is perceived only by your, is determined by your conscience, which is, I think, subjectivism, and I don't think subjectivism is true. But yeah, we're gonna get into this video, and I'm sorry if my voice sounds emotionless, but yeah, hopefully I can work on that soon or grow out of it.
Hey internets, one interesting question I sometimes get is what exactly I mean when I say the phrase solipsistic reasoning. And I realize it's actually worth making a video on this, because it's a very common type of reasoning mistake that a lot of people don't really know.
Is it like subjective reasoning? I'm assuming it's like subjective reasoning because basically solipsism is all of reality would be subjective because your mind creates reality, right?
Or they may have a basic idea of what it is, but not really know just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Anyways, it starts with understanding the philosophy of solipsism, and also realizing why it's a little bit of a flawed philosophy, or at least flawed from the perspective of someone who takes it too literally. Solipsism is the epistemology that points out that you can't really be sure of anything outside of the existence of your own mind. Or in other words, you can't...
Okay, yeah, so it's basically... your mind creates its own reality because you can't be sure of anything outside of your mind because you only exist inside.
You can't actually prove that the people you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis actually have consciousness or quality of their own. You can believe these things.
You can only prove that you exist. You can only know that you exist. You would think that your mind is just projecting other human beings that look like you, so basically like a projection screen.
You can't actually prove it. For example, you cannot prove that you are not a brain in a vat, and that this reality you experience isn't just the Matrix being fed to you. There's no way to actually prove that anything you experience outside of your conscious experience of reality is reality. So if the world you live in actually exists, or if you're...
you can prove reality. Okay, you can prove that something outside of yourself is happening, even though you could say we can't prove that others have conscience because we only are stuck in our own minds. You can sense that others have feelings and, you know, stuff like that. Two-person's actions would affect each other, so I mean, if one action affects another person, that could prove their existence technically, because they could do it back, whatever action that would be. I don't know, this is probably a shit argument coming from me.
Just in a dream experiencing that world, and the world is simply a projection of your own consciousness.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't actually empirically prove it. And to some degree, this is true. There's no way to really objectively, fully, 100% prove that the reality you experience is in fact not just a figment of your...
Here's the thing, guys. I believe that reality universally is objective. So I do believe that, you know, stuff like the universe, you know, I think theism is true. Obviously, God created an objective reality because there's objective transcendent truths. I do believe that our consciences, we each have individual ways of experiencing reality or perceiving reality. The way I perceive reality won't be the same way you perceive reality. Now, obviously, I'm not saying this is a big difference. Well, it could be. I'm just saying the images that we create are based on the light coming to our eyes, which could affect us in different ways. Imagine if you had a 4D being, right? If that being would experience reality totally different from us. If we were to go as 3D beings to a 4D reality, we would experience kind of differently from a 4D being because we're 3D beings. It would kind of just seem trippy.
The problem comes when people actually take it seriously and use this as their main philosophy. That's where you get the literal solipsist. The people who unironically believe that because they cannot prove anything beyond their conscious mind is real, then therefore those things must not be real.
That's where you get subjectivism and like postmodern like thinking, relative moralism. Like there's your truth, my truth.
To some people,
Yes.
believing that they are effectively God, thinking that they have created the world that they experience
Yeah,
and
New
everything.
Age. That's a New Age philosophy, guys. You just believe that you are God, like you're one with the universe, and that you think you're God, and that you can like manifest stuff.
Else is simply an illusion. So they take it to its extreme point and they commit something that I kind of like to refer to as an empiricist fallacy. Or in other words, I cannot measure this, I cannot prove this, therefore it doesn't exist. And the problem with that, of course, is it's not actually very good reasoning. Just because it's technically impossible to prove that anything beyond your conscious mind exists doesn't mean that that's most likely the reality that you live in.
A lot of stuff like before there wasn't in ancient times. We didn't have there was like sciences back in the day, but not as much as we do today. If I'm interpreting what he's saying correctly, it's just because you don't see or find evidence for it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Because obviously, if you've never seen any other galaxy up close or a planet but ours, that doesn't disprove that planet or a galaxy's existence. Just because you don't see something or it's hard to prove something, it doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't exist, because there's also a possibility that it does exist.
But anyway, you might be wondering what the heck this has to do with solipsism. And the answer is that the literal position of being a solipsist kind of runs into the same problem. While it's true you can't actually verify empirically that other people are conscious and that the world is not just simply a product of your imagination, there really isn't much evidence we have that we are that special. For example, I myself tend to have lucid dreams at times, which means a dream that I'm actually aware of the fact that I'm dreaming.
I never had a lucid dream before. I would like to have one. I don't know why. I never had a lucid dream, but I wonder what that would feel like.
Solipsistic epistemology is probably not true, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that I'm not able to do the same things when I'm not dreaming. There's no real evidence that I am that special of a piece in this world. The realization that you ain't all that. The mature understanding that the world doesn't really seem to revolve around you. So just
Yeah, because that's what creates narcissism, is thinking that the world revolves around you, and that's what's happening, I think, with these like transgender ideology, progressive ideologies of the modern LGBTQ movement, and the just insane woke stuff.
we didn't really have any evidence that the sun had anything special about it in terms of being able to have celestial bodies orbiting around it, and thus it wasn't surprising when we were finally able to measure exoplanets and fully verify their existence empirically. It would be very weird and very unlikely if you were the only person who was truly conscious.
So it's like, if you look at the sun, okay, your face is in front of the sun, but then you turn your face away. You can't prove that the sun hasn't disappeared in the sense that you wouldn't know unless you turned your mind. But that doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist. The sun is still there, because from previous experiences, we can be sure that the sun is there.
Why the people who actually are solipsists in the literal sense, and that they actually truly unironically believe that they are God and that they are the only ones that exist.
So they believe that they're God, so they can like throw lightning and shit? That's insane. If they actually think they are God, then I would love to see them turn water into wine, by their own authority, of course.
They tend to be very egocentric, and oftentimes a little bit immature, and in some cases a little bit psychotic. There's even a few studies out there that confirm that people with solipsistic thinking or solipsistic reasoning have some loose ties to various psychological personality disorders, like psychopathy or narcissistic personality disorder.
I am not surprised of that at all, because that seems to be what New Age people are suffering from, and also very lefty woke LGBTQ, and the far left. Okay, not talking about liberal. Okay, you could be any party, I don't give a shit. You could be any party and you could still be deranged.
Overlap there. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense. If you legitimately believe that other people weren't real, it suddenly makes sense why psychopaths often treat people
you
like...
wouldn't care about them. It's the problem, is that you wouldn't care about God, you wouldn't care about man, you wouldn't care about even children, probably, if you're gonna go on full solipsism, because only you exist, in your perspective, and you believe yourself to be God. So why would you care about the other, so-called projections around you.
Things or their emotions aren't real, or treat people like objects that don't have any rights. Because again, in the worldview of the literal solipsist, the people who push that ideology to the maximum conclusion, thus believing that they are God and that they're the only ones that exist, then of course with that kind of thinking they wouldn't really feel any kind of ethical or moral obligation towards their fellow man in any way. So while solipsism provides an interesting type of philosophy because
you might as well do the same towards animals.
It's interesting to think about and interesting to ponder, oh yeah, I don't really have a way of proving that anything beyond my own consciousness exists. It can in fact become a problem when people take it too seriously.
Well, it's a problem because it like he said, it's a stupid argument. We can't fully prove that outside of your mind something exists. We can technically suggest that something outside of ourselves exists. First of all, because we can see, but also it's because we could do stuff like, I don't know, experimentation. There's science, the scientific method, and also other people's actions affecting you, which would, I think, dismiss solipsism, because other people's actions, if they affect you, that proves that that person is real and that they're not just a projection of your mind.
And what's more interesting, though, and this is where the rabbit hole starts to get a little bit deeper, is that there's kind of a gray area in solipsistic thinking. There are a lot of people out there who are actually agnostic towards this kind of thinking. So rather than fully taking the plunge and believing that they are God and that they are the only consciousness that exists in this world, they might instead take an agnostic approach to it, where they're not sure if they're the only person that actually exists. Or perhaps they subconsciously forget that they probably aren't the only person that exists. And so you could call these people solipsist light. They occasionally think this way, but not all the time. And as a result of this, that's where you get solipsistic reasoning. That's where you get these kind of bizarre reasoning errors that stems from them perhaps subconsciously forgetting that they probably...
I mean, I guess in some way this influences atheism, right? Like the new atheism? I don't know, does it? I'm pretty sure this would influence some atheism. And like I said, progressivism and New Age, because there is no way that their narcissism does not come from a solipsist thinking. Ultimately, solipsism would be a part of subjectivism, and therefore you would get moral subjectivism. You would see reality as relative.
Communication in a very specific way, sucking in a way that they expect other people to have magic knowledge of what they're thinking about. Because someone who...
Gnosticism. There is no way that solipsism and Gnosticism have no connection. There's absolutely 100%. There is at least a bit of Gnosticism in solipsism, a bit of solipsism in Gnosticism.
Forget that other people do not possess the same knowledge that they do. They'll think that their vantage point is the only possible vantage point. For example, I had one not exactly the brightest boss back when I was in college, when I was working part-time at a store. And I'm sure we've all met someone like this before. He would make really non-specific requests. He would often ask people to get him the ladder, and the problem was, at this job, we had about 20 different ladders in the back room, because this was a warehouse job and there was a bunch of different reasons to use a ladder. And so naturally, when he would ask this question, and he made this mistake over and over and over again, nobody would know what the heck he's talking about. And so one of us would have to ask him, okay, which specific ladder are you asking for? Nobody knew which one he wanted. And nobody wanted to point this out to him because...
Okay, they're all the same ladders, so what the hell does it matter then? How hard is it to pick a ladder? I mean, are you so OCD about that? I mean, I'm a little OCD about things, but it's a ladder. The type of ladder is not going to determine, like, it's not like a superpower in Mario.
He would then get very irrationally angry. He would have this kind of narcissistic rage about him whenever anybody asked him to clarify what exactly he was asking for.
He would get mad over a ladder. That's crazy.
And so one day I decided to just take one for the team because honestly I didn't care. I was a college kid, and asked him, you know, this place has hundreds of different shelves with thousands of different items. Why is it you constantly expect us to know which one you want? And his response was something along the lines of just, well, it's obvious what I want.
It's obvious what he wants. That's his response, guys. You should automatically know what your boss wants whenever he says, oh, well, it's obvious what I want, you dumbass. That's the advice that you should take. That's how you're gonna make it in life.
How would people know what's going on inside your head? We aren't mind readers. And his response was just repeating himself.
You don't have to tell. Yeah, just repeat yourself. You don't have to clarify. Just say, well, it's obvious, and then that clears everything up. That solves reality. In fact, I think that would solve world hunger.
Insisting that it was somehow obvious. And going back and forth on this, I eventually realized that this poor guy legitimately did not understand, could not wrap his little brain around the fact that the thoughts going inside his head were not necessarily the same things as what everybody else was thinking. He genuinely did not understand that the world, the universe, did not revolve around his own consciousness.
This is, again, with pronoun people, the insane ones, because they will always try to shame you and expect you to use your pronouns, like Lily Tino. Those people will like be in shock whenever like a waitress or a service person misgenders them. They're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you misgendered me. And it's like, dude, what the fuck? How am I supposed to know what's going through your damn mind? I'm pretty sure that the progressivism, all this stuff, it's tied with Gnosticism, subjectivism, solipsism, all this, like, relativistic shit.
It tends to be subconscious at times again, and not everybody who thinks this way will consciously claim that they sincerely, fully, truly believe that their mind is the only mind that exists in reality, or that they truly believe that all of reality bends to their will. But subconsciously, they will reason based on this assumption because, again, it's the only mind that they know. And so they find
circular reasoning then, because you're the only mind, therefore everyone is you, and you are everyone.
Themselves committing these really bizarre, weird reasoning mistakes based on these flawed assumptions. And now, of course, there's also many other reasons someone can be bad at communication. It's not...
I want to be a part of this dance club. This sounds fun.
Solipsism is one thing that can cause you to be a bad communicator. If someone just casually forgets the fact that their perspective probably isn't the only perspective in reality, they can easily find themselves in this really silly position where they're just expecting people to, again, possess this magic knowledge of what their perception is. Because at least on a subconscious level, they're having difficulty comprehending in real time that their perception isn't the only real perception.
It looks like that, like there's a penis, like in like that Bojack's head. Maybe that's how he uses to represent them, just like a dick, like implanted in your head.
But that's just one way that solipsistic reasoning can show itself. In addition to bad communication stemming from expecting magic knowledge, another example is people who get very irrationally offended by everything.
Oh my gosh, it's a blue-haired feminine. Yeah, irrationally offended by everything. See? Progressivism.
Now, of course, everybody gets offended by some things at times.
Okay.
However, you may notice that there are people out there who just seem to be terminally offended by everything. It stems from them assuming that everything they find offensive was directly intended to offend them. Because, of course, certain events and phrases and things going on can always be interpreted in hundreds of different ways. And let's say something can be interpreted 99 ways, and one of those ways is offensive.
They'll make everyone seem like the bad guy, like it's a Disney movie, and then they're the like hopeless, like innocent victim that is being pushed around when that's literally not the reality. And people like Lily Tino and Dylan Mulvaney, a person who says, oh, I think that it should be illegal to use false pronouns. First of all, shut the fuck up, Dylan. Okay, you have no right to tell me what I can and cannot say. Let alone put me in jail. Not everything I say is my intention of being malice towards you. If I don't even have malice towards you to begin with, I could just be saying something and it's not explicitly directed at you.
You said something that hurt their feelings, and therefore you must have intended to hurt their feelings because your interpretation must be the same thing as their interpretation because their interpretation is the only one that exists. And again,
there's just a mindfuck right there. That is a mindfuck right there. My cat would suffer an aneurysm if she heard this reasoning. I'm just gonna be honest here, and I would probably need to take her to a vet. I would like feel bad for them if they're like ignorant, but like also if you have those types who are just like so rock solid, like wholeheartedly believe this, if it's your full decision and no one else can change that, it's really only up to you, but your heart may be too hardened.
Permanently offended. They're always butthurt and they always think that they're the victim of society. They end up thinking that the world's out to get them or something. It all just feeds into this constant victim mentality. And it just largely again stems from them not really understanding that the world probably doesn't revolve around their reality.
Okay, so we've established now that progressivism, woke ideology, all of that stuff has something to do with solipsism. Therefore, relativism. All this ties back probably into Gnosticism. All of it ties into Gnosticism, modern day Gnosticism. The Albigensians would be fucking happy to see how much Gnosticism is in this world. I'm sorry if this video is like kind of short, guys. Leave if you want to. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to. Again, thanks for like the 10 reaching 10 subs, and I wanted to thank you for your viewership. I want it to mean a lot to me, and I know it should mean a lot to me, guys, because I know that you speak grateful for the little viewership you get, guys, and I don't want to like be fake, and I know, and I have trouble with that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I want it to be real. That's like the core of my channel, is I want to be real. You see all these creators, like there are a lot of creators today that are just doing it because it's for the money, in fame. They don't really care about what they believe, guys, but I feel like that I do want to care about what I believe in, because I have this conviction, I believe, from God, that I'm supposed to speak the truth, and that I'm supposed to not let go of the truth, and I'm supposed to defend it even in the face of suffering or censorship. I don't believe that like you can censor truth, and the people who want to censor truth, I think they're afraid. They're obviously, I think they're afraid. A lot of them, they're afraid of the truth. I don't think it's that they fully would deny truth. I just think a lot of them just are afraid of what they don't know. They're afraid of giving like a fantasy or something up, because they don't know what's gonna happen. But I promise you guys that the truth will help you. Jesus said, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That wasn't just something he said. That wasn't just a catchphrase or something. He promised that the truth would set us free. Set us free from what? It would set us free from confusion. It would set us free from sin, the enemy, the devil. It would set us free from all things holding us back from a higher purpose in life. And I think that we need to start finding more purpose in our lives, instead of just doing stuff like focusing on pronouns, identity, and all that shit. Like Shawa, it's okay. You can have like your like, I'm an Italian. I'm proud to be an Italian, but that's not all of me. First, I'm a Catholic. That is, first of all, what I am. You can have your identity, but you also need something more than that, like a higher purpose. Your identity is not gonna mean anything in the real world if you don't have anything else. That's all I have to say watch for today's video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to suggest any other videos I should watch. And yeah, that's all for today. Bye, guys. If your body